Hello and welcome to The Virtual Frontier, the podcast about virtual teams created by a virtual team. I'm Chris, and I'm part of the team here at FlashUp. On today's episode, we have Fabian Schünke. Fabian is a senior consultant at Vollmer Scheffczyk. Daniel and Fabian had an awesome conversation talking about virtual teams, agile engineering, and the future of work. So here is episode 11 of The Virtual Frontier, featuring our guest, Fabian Schünke. Take it away, Daniel.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm guest speaker at the Virtual Frontiers podcast and part of our virtual team at FlashUp. Innovation, transformation, and self-organization are big buzzwords, filled and defined very differently, but still mostly experienced with a lot of uncertainty, crossing all industry sectors. Today, we want to discuss with our podcast partner, Fabian Schünke, some of those topics more detailed and bring some certainty to our audience. But before we dive into the topic of today's podcast, Fabian, please go ahead and tell us a little bit about your own career path, and so we can catch up with you where we're heading in the near future.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me. It's quite cool to be part of this podcast. I'm quite excited. I already told you, Daniel, that we will see if the 45 minutes will be enough, because there's so many things to talk about. So I can.
We're happy to make two parts of it.
Perfect. So you asked me about my background and my career path. I started out as a machinist, so I did a job education in a mid-size company close to Munich. And after school, I wanted to do something with my hands, so I did a job education as a machinist. I loved it. It was great doing something very practical. But when I was moved to production and I had to work shift, I realized that this might be not the best idea of doing it for 40 years. So at the end of that job education, I started looking around what's possible in that company, and I did the first simple engineering works. So very simple construction, engineering, design stuff. But I realized as a machinist, it will be nearly impossible to do that as a professional. So I decided to do my engineering level. So I did a diploma in mechatronics, so mechanics and electronics. And during that studies, I was still working in that company. Company is called Schleifring und Apparatebau. It was called in the past. Now it's only Schleifring. And so I started doing some design work in Schleifring, slip rings, rotary joints, the English expression. And there was an American company I was working together with in that time, and they bought that slip ring, and I had the opportunity to do an internship in the US. So I moved to Boston for a while and did some engineering work there. A company called Analogic. It's north of Boston. And when I came back from the US, I actually was planning to do something else, but Schleifring offered me the opportunity to work as a sales engineer and project manager. So I did my diploma thesis in project management for a development in Israel. So it was a gamma camera development for a company in Israel. And I did the project management for it. And after it started as a sales engineer, and it was awesome. I had US, Israel, and then Japan later on as areas. So I was traveling a lot, meeting a lot of people, working a lot of times in international teams, obviously. And then I realized that not only the technical side, but also management, economics in general, organization, strategy, and so on is also a key factor in companies. So I decided to do an MBA. And I did an MBA part-time in Munich for 3.5 years, which was quite intense after work, always going to university. Well, I was planning to leave Schleifling, to be honest, and see something else. But then there was the opportunity to become head of sales for medical applications, which was awesome. After that, I wanted to leave Schleifling again, not because I didn't like the company, but I wanted to do something else. But then they offered me to be head of a business unit, and I stayed again. So at the very end, it was 18 years from starting the machinist education until I left the company finally. And during the time as head of business unit, I was the head of sales, engineering, front end, and quality engineering. And I realized, at that time, okay, wait a minute, a company is not to be seen as a machine, but of course there are people interacting with each other, and especially if you're not in the same department, this can become quite challenging. So if you are working in a matrix organization, as I did, you realize, okay, something is wrong here. So you're pushing, and you're working with customers, and then it comes to a centralized department like sourcing or production. And I was like, whoa, I was going crazy, because I always thought, okay, they don't realize how important this is, and we need to work for the customer. And they, of course, work for their department, for their keys, for their KPIs, and for their whatever. And I didn't realize what was going on. And that was the time when my boss came up with the idea of bringing consultants in. I was not very happy, because during my MBA, I met some consultants, and I had a picture or an image of consultants in my head, and I thought, for the problem that we are challenging, this will not help. But founders, so Vollmer Scheffczyk, came along, and I realized in the first meeting, oh wait, okay, they are completely different. So they came up with ideas and teasers and so on that I was not facing at all until that moment. So they were telling crazy things like, okay, it's not so much about the processes. Let's talk about how this organization as a sum of human beings is functioning. And why people act like that. It's not because they are not willing. It's because they also stick, or they also are stuck in some kind of context or whatever. And they kind of opened a door to a completely new world for me. That is 4 years ago. I read every single book that they handed over to me. I put so much energy into this world, and yeah, it came to the point that I decided to move on and be part of that organization, V&S, which is a completely self-organized consultant company, and trying to help other organizations to move towards that way, or become more effective, more efficient. And I've been doing that for 2 years. And I was planning to do it longer than that, to be honest, again. But then there came an opportunity along to become a managing director in a mid-size production company. And they also started moving towards that direction. And I can be part of that transformation, and be in a position that I can really take simply take decisions to move in the right direction when it comes to that transformation. And that will start in July 1st, or on July 1st. And so I'm quite excited.
That's great. This is a fantastic story and quite a trip over the globe that you had over the last 18 or 20 years. And it's very interesting, as you say, that you came originally like from the production side, and you learned the practical stuff and everything, and then you changed to the management side, where you could see as well like the other topics that are important to a company. I think one of our topics today is innovation, and as you passed so many different stations, I'm sure you can tell us a little bit more about what is innovation, and maybe when I think we fake a lot of time innovation with because something innovation and it isn't innovation, or we implement things that our competitor is doing. And what is the definition for yourself, maybe, or maybe you have a more firm transmission? What is innovation and what is not?
Innovation. There's a quite funny story. When I was at Schleifing, innovation was a big topic. So I think Schleifing is a quite innovative company still. But nevertheless, we always have the feeling, okay, there need to be more. We need to push more. We need to be faster than the competition, and so on and so on. And so there was a group of managers that decided to build kind of a task force for innovation. And in that time being, my background was very management driven. So I remembered some speeches of innovation people, for instance, the innovation manager of BMW in Munich. And I contacted him and I said, hey, we are a mid-sized company here west of Munich. Are you interested in helping us or giving a keynote and blah? And he said, yeah. And he came to Schleifing and he helped us building up an innovation management system. And it was basically like BMW system, way smaller. So of course, probably like 100 times smaller than what BMW does. But the basic steps were the same. So we thought innovation management as a machine. So if you do this, then the result will be XY. And there was an online store, kind of, you could type in your ideas and It was like a machine. And 2 years later, I wrote a blog, was called, in German it was called, Es lief eigentlich ganz gut, bis wir Innovationsmanagement eingeführt haben. So you could translate it to, it was all right until we introduced innovation management. Because we totally oversaw what is the key factor for innovation. So the human being again, and not the process. And so I was thinking about it a lot. And there was a colleague at V&S, Michael Kasteleiner, one of the partners, who had a similar story. And so we were pushing that topic innovation a lot at V&S and thinking about it a lot. And so at the end, there's the definition for me that innovation, it is only innovation if the customer or the user is recognizing it as something new. And it must bring value to the customer or the user, and it needs to get appreciation. And now it sounds pretty simple, but I think a huge difference, and the mistake that we did is, it is the customer or the user and not the manager or the hierarchy or the management who does that decision or takes that decision. So what I mean is, we had an innovation system, people came with ideas, and the management charged if this is right or wrong, or if it's promising, or blah, 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 blah. And this is bullshit. this is absolutely bullshit, because the management cannot do it in a complex world. So I think we all are still stick to the idea of this strong manager who knows how the world works and can take good decisions because his education is so fucking good. Yeah, but the world is not acting like this anymore. So even if we think it's a good idea, or other way around it, even if we think it's a bad idea, you can see that every day. People are coming up with companies or with ideas that you never thought it would break through, and then it's the new big thing.
Yes.
And so for me, the only three key things is it's new to the customer or the user? Does it bring value to the customer? And do you get appreciation? So money or something else in exchange. And so that was a huge learning for me, that I was like, okay, so my role as a manager changes from charging and taking decisions over ideas to building an environment that people can try and error, building MVPs, getting budgets, getting obstacles out of the way, being quick, learn quick, do things. And instead of being that strong manager, trying to pretend that you know how the world works. Sometimes I think there are still some business left where this, let's call it, old way of managing innovation might still work. So there might be this crazy guy understanding his market, understanding his customers. Then I would say, okay, stop doing a design thinking circus and all that stuff. Simply tell the people what you want, execute it, and be successful. But my thesis is that there are not many businesses left where you can be that way, or where you will find managers like that. I think a lot of people still hope they could be like that, but I think it's nearly impossible.
Yeah, the one man show businesses are dying businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
There may be still a few left where you can do that if it's not really complex. But in general, I think this is a dying species of managers.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, I think we are also running into a paradoxon that it's not working anymore, but at the same time, that's what you expect from a good manager. So you come into a company and you say, okay, but what's your idea? What do we need to do in the market to be successful? And if the manager says, I don't know, still the community, the organization and companies sometimes are not at the point to accept that. But I think it's the truth in most of the times. And another thing that I found very, very often is that everyone is asking for the new Facebook. So it needs to be this huge new thing. But I keep saying with customers now as a consultant that back in the days when someone came up with the idea of toilet paper, it's not this huge big thing, but back in the time it was innovation and it was great. And what I try to say with that funny story, or with that metaphor,
yes,
is that it does not need to be the new big huge thing. It needs to be something that customer or users appreciate, and they give you something in exchange. And even if I don't know, some digital app is nothing crazy for an IT company, for engineering company, or for a machinist company, it could be a huge innovation to have an app. And that is another thing. It does not need to be the big new thing. It just needs to get the appreciation from the user. And so now I try to think innovation more as a iterating, quick learning surrounding environment, and not like a plan that you can execute and a machine that you can drill and always foresee what the next step needs to be. If you can do that, you're happy, do it, execute, bam, successful. But I think there are not many companies left where you can do that.
I think you already answered my next question mostly, but I still I think we can tell a little bit more about why is it then companies often have the theoretical knowledge about how to create a culture of innovation, but then in the daily real life they fail like completely.
I think what I've learned in the last 2 or 4 years with founders is in the past I also thought an organization as a machine, but it's not. And there's a second mistake that I did, which is that I thought that some people are simply strange and you have to fix people. So meaning I was looking into, I don't know, production department or whatever, or manufacturing department. And I thought the people are strange. Why do they behave like that? That's crazy. But what I did not realize back in that time is that, of course, the people are not strange. Some, but but 99% of the people are just people, and they want to do good work and they want to solve problems. So there need to be something else, not the people themselves. And so there's a story that Benno Löffler, our CEO, tells a lot, and I love it. He said, okay, let's try to imagine there's this one guy, and this one guy, he gets up in the morning, and it's a Sunday, so he goes to church. And of course, he lives in Bavaria, in Munich, so he needs to go to soccer. So in the afternoon, he's at FC Bayern in the soccer stadium. And after that, he wants to chill out with his mates, with his friends. So he goes into a spa wellness thing. So it's this one guy, is always the same person. If he goes to church, he will shut up, he will be quiet, he will look very firmly and so on. In the soccer stadium, he will get a couple of beers, he will be loud, he will be shouting. And in spa and wellness, he will get naked, and they will talk quietly, but he will be naked. So you will get behavior which is dependent on the context he is in. So it's the same guy, and the same guy is very very quiet in the morning. He's drunk in the afternoon and loud and funny in bar, and in the spa he's naked. And now, if you shift that, so if you say get naked in the church, be quiet in the football stadium, and get drunk in the spa, it will be strange. And of course, this is very simplified and blah, blah, blah. But if you take that further into the professional surrounding, if you take a very, very talented, innovative guy at Google, and you swap him with a guy in a hierarchical system where innovation is driven by the top management, the thesis is after 1, 2, 3 months, they will also swap behavior. And of course, there's a tool set that they learned at Google or in the other company that they will still be able to do. But the behavior is much more driven by the context he's in, or she, than by his personality. And I think we all would love to think that it's different. Not with me. No, I'm stronger than the organization or the context. But there are examples in history, not only in companies, but also in history, where you can see, no. The majority of the people will fall into the behavior of the context. So to answer your question, I think the management should think much more about the context which is present at the company, and then observe the culture in that company and try to change things that can be changed. You cannot change culture, but you can change structures. You can change the context in some ways, and then observe the culture again to push the culture in towards a way or a direction that you want to have it and want or is healthy for innovation. And that is, I think, it could be an explanation why everyone is understanding we need innovation. Oh, and people should think innovative and creative and entrepreneur, and all of that. But if the context is not allowing it, so if you're in the fucking church and you tell the people all the time get naked, they won't get naked.
Or it's going to be a big mess.
Yeah, there's this one guy getting naked, he will be kicked out. And that is happening in companies. You have this one guy saying, okay, I don't give a shit. I'm building up this homepage, I'm upping it. And then the boss is coming along and saying, okay, who did sign it off? No one. I thought we should think entrepreneur. No. You have to get it signed off by me. And then the next time he has an idea, he will not do it.
Yeah, that's completely correct. This whole process of transform or innovation comes always along with transformation as well inside the company. So if a company decides, okay, we're gonna do some changes, or we're gonna implement new tools in our company. I think as you worked especially for a consulting company in the industrial sector with a focus on preparing these mainly traditional organized companies for the future, I'm sure you have experience of some transformative process inside the company. The transformation of an organization, the way we work together and collaborate, and all this is changing really fast and increasing speed. Seeing those changes happening all over the globe, do you think companies in general and humans more in particular are aware and prepared for what is coming and what maybe it's needed for personal quick learning and adaptation?
So of course, I only have a small image or small picture of some companies I met, and of course in a certain market that we are in. But I think, or what we discuss at Founders right now is, you can tell a trend that more and more managers are complaining about. We try harder and harder and harder, and it gets worse. Customers, they simply don't know anymore what they really want. They change specs all the time. Competition is getting crazy. The political surrounding is uncertainty in perfection. And so everyone, I don't know, but a lot of people are mirroring us. There's a change to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And you hear a lot the sentence, back in the time, it was so great. Somehow we found a solution. We managed to do it. And So there's a trend. I think you can see that. And And now I think there are at least two types of managers. There's this one type trying to do the things that they did in the past simply harder and more. And there are these other guys who start kind of an exploration trip. So what else is there? Are there alternatives to the way of thinking that I have in mind right now? And then they start to do experiments and try to find out new ways. But a lot of these second type management guys are falling back into a trap, because until now it was clear that if you have a problem, you just have to search for the right way and then execute it, which is okay if you have a complicated problem and you have simply think hard enough and you will find a solution. But now, if it's really complex, you have to try, error, learn, adapt. And that is something, especially in the market and in the niche that we are in, that managers have a very, very hard time with. The acceptance of the uncertainty. And for us as consultants, this was all a lot of times it was a huge problem because our customers ask us, okay, you are the consultant, tell us what to do. And then the answer is often, we need to try. And they're like, no, we are paying a lot of money, tell us what to do. Well, I just told you what you need to do is try. And I think this is really a huge obstacle. But well, if my thesis is right and the complexity is gaining even more, it is like an evolution, and companies who will not learn to adapt and fall into this new way of organizing things, I think the consequences that they die because they cannot adapt fast enough. And this could be a consequence.
Yep, for sure. One thing about the change you talked. You work in a consulting company, or you have worked the last years, that is basically a self-organized company without formal hierarchies, mostly. There are a lot of misconceptions in the industry about what is a self-organized company and how they are operating in some way in a holacracy model. So could you tell us a little bit more about that change that happened already in your own company and how you adapt with that? Because I think I can remember this is not all flower power and happy doing. So there's things happening on the way and things you have to adapt, right?
Absolutely. That was one of the reasons why I moved to V&S, because I wanted to experience myself how it is to work in such a company. And I wrote a blog article some weeks ago, which is called 1 Year Without a Boss. If I would have known it. It is, I opened the blog article with a conversation I had with my brother. My brother has 3 kids, and of course he had the first kid before I had my first daughter. And when I asked him, how is it with kids? Wow, isn't it great? And And he said, well, I can explain for 2 hours, and you will pretend that you will understand, but you will not until you have kids. And then you will feel it. And of course, I can explain the feeling, but you have to feel it. And of course, in that conversation, I was getting kind of frustrated because I was like, you can still tell me how it is. But when I got my first daughter and now my second, I would tell people without kids the same thing. And working for an organization without hierarchy or self-organized organization, I would pretend that with that, trying to explain how it is to have kids is kind of how to trying to explain how it is to work in a self-organization. Nevertheless, I will try to do it.
Share experience.
Yes. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it is different and it is hard and it is so different that you could not even imagine that it's so different. And that's the same with kids, I think, as my experience. So when I got to Found S, I thought, well, there's no hierarchy, so there's no boss, so we do things together. And that is misconception number one, that hierarchy is gone. That's not true. Hierarchy is always there,
and
but
even
it's
more
not
strong sometimes.
Correct, but it's not as explicit and static as in a traditional organization, but it's always there. And there was something. Now I kind of think it's funny that I was so I don't know, stupid maybe even. So of course there is hierarchy, and now you have to find out where is it right now exactly, who has the most competence in that situation, and who should I follow in that situation. But it's simply not true that it's gone, and that was kind of stupid to think that hierarchy is gone. And the second thing that is funny is that everyone is saying, oh, okay, so you're self-organized, so everyone is doing what he or she wants, so it's kind of chaos or anarchy or random. And that is funny. I mean, it's still an operating organization. I mean, we need to make money, we need to pay our bills, so of course not everyone is simply doing whatever he wants. So there's a clear roadmap kind of, or orientation. So what are our goals for this year? What is our focus? What's my job? What do I need to do? And now after 2 years, I have to say I'm very close to my colleagues from a personal side. I'm very, very close there. Nearly all of them are friends now. But in discussions, it's even harder than before. So if we have discussions about topics for our customers or for our strategy, the discussions are hard, very, very, very hard, and that's good. I mean, the quality becomes better. But in a hierarchy or classical organization, it was not that hard, at least my experience, because it was clear after, I don't know, there was a discussion going on for 1 minute, and then it was clear, okay, well, he's my boss. We just simply do it as he wants. And that's different. And so everyone who thinks that it's a, as you call it, easy hippie living, totally wrong. Totally wrong. And there's one thing people are saying, well, it's kind of chaos. There's no structure. Oh yeah, that's agile or new work or self-organized. No, I would say in a self-organized system, you need even more structure, but different.
Yeah.
Because in a hierarchy, it's so easy. You just look up or you look down, and that's the way it goes. And then you have processes and just follow it. But if you have a self-organization and you don't have structures, for instance, how do we take decisions, or who's doing marketing right now, who is building up the strategy for the next 3 years, and how do we come to conclusions and decisions in this strategy work. If you don't take care of that structure, yes, then you go into chaos. But that has nothing to do with professional self-organization or holacracy, even. Yeah, but so, I think you know what I mean.
Yes, completely. I could experience some similar things with FlashUp as well, where I'm working, and we are self-organized as well. So people think often this is something where you don't have or you don't communicate enough, and you have to seek out. No, it's a complete difference. We talk everything double. There's over communication about a lot of things that we have to talk more intense than maybe a company where, as you mentioned it, just look up to the boss and wait for instruction or for a decision. So it's getting everything. It's getting more intense. But the good outcome is, you mentioned as well, most of your colleagues are right. You're now your friends. This is as well something that happens with you getting closer, and you have to talk about things more intense.
Yeah, that's that's also a very interesting point. I had a lot of customers, and we were talking about solving problems without hierarchy, and doing that together as a self-organization. And then there was this topic: do we now need to become friends? Do I need to be open to my colleagues? And I heard that a lot, that people said, well, but this is profession, and leisure is leisure, and so there are two different things. If I go to work, these are my colleagues, and I don't need to be open to them. I don't need to become friends. And I thought about that a lot, and my position finally is the following: I agree, you don't need to, but if your competition somehow manage to have an environment where a lot of people are friends, or it's a very friendly, open environment, they will become better in solving problems. They will become real teams. And at the end, they will be a strong competition, and they will be better than you. So yes, you don't need to do that, but think about it, that your competition might do it, and this becomes a competition relevant factor. And so I think it is kind of how to say, you need to be careful in saying, I split that, and I only, if I'm at work, I'm just professional, and that's all I do. This might not be enough anymore in the future. And so that's kind of my position now.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And just like, I think you care more for a friend, or how he is doing, how he's performing, and what the problems are, or what problems could be, than for a colleague.
Yeah, there's the study of Amy Edmondson. I think came out last year, or at least I saw it the first time last year, about psychological safety in teams, and that's the success factor number one for successful teams. And you rather have, let's say, lower education but a psychological safety environment, the results of this team will be higher than you have high potentials but only egoistic personalities, and a not psychological safety environment. The results will be very low. And this study, man, this blew me away last year. I was like, yeah, it's so clear. And if I think about my history in work, I remember leaders where I felt exactly that. I simply felt safe, and therefore I did things. And I think these are the topics and things we need to take much more care of as the leader of tomorrow or the managers of tomorrow than telling the people what to do.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. I have one question more for you. As we have like those over decades, in even maybe centuries, we taught and instructed people at work in very hierarchical structures with little space or no space to innovate and no space to make their own decisions. How we get those people onboarded and included, as they have a lot of skills on the hard side or hard skills, but they're stuck still in those traditional organizational thinking. So, for example, the Deutsche Bahn or Bosch or Lufthansa, like big companies, big enterprises, but they have a huge workforce which is still stuck in this old thinking, old organization.
Yeah. Maybe as a starting point, I love the idea of human type X and human type Y. So in a Taylor organization, you have more thinking of human type X. So you need to give benefits. You need to motivate people so that they get things done. And of course, the type Y, where you say, well, everyone is motivated and everyone wants to solve problems and do great stuff. Let's build an environment so that they can do it. And obviously, I'm following the type Y. And if we follow that consequently, I think step number one is get rid of all the shit that demotivates people. So if I need to fill out 10 pages to get, I don't know, my money back from traveling last week, or I need a new laptop or whatever because I want to program that app and the laptop is broken and this takes 10 weeks, or I'm managing a very, very complex project and I need to go to milestone reporting every second day, and it doesn't help me. It only gives the management a more secure, more safe feeling. Get rid of all that shit. So let's go through organizations and look. Okay, what is really building up value for the customer? What is needed to be innovative? What is asked by the law? And everything else needs to be scrapped, needs to be kicked out. And a lot of people ask, okay, how does this Scrum or design thinking or whatever you want to call it, how does that work? Because we need to become agile. Then I think the right answer should be, before you start implementing the next new thing, let's get rid of 10 old things that are just causing pain and time consuming and so on. So that would be step number one, because this will change the context people are in. So if you change the way of reporting in a project management, let's say in the past it was a milestone management system and you had to report every second day, and you change that to a platform where you can get help instead of report the status, that will change the context. And maybe people start liking that meeting again. And then I would get rid of rules and talk about principles. Start out with the agile principles and adapt those to your own organization, so that people can take decisions on their own again, and not having a rule which is taking away your decision making process. And all over that, you need to give orientation you might want to call it vision. I don't care, but where are we heading to? Why are we doing that? And of course, at the end, you need a tool set to do that. So how does Scrum works? I don't know, or how does a Kanban board works, or whatever. But that is kind of, for me, from the priority 6, 7, 8. I don't know. The other things are much more important. And then let's build our own tool set, whatever is helpful and needed for our context. And I think if you, there are so many good books about that, but don't look for the next blueprint. I don't think, I think that's the wrong order. That's not the jumping point. Using Scrum is good, but using Scrum in a church,
have to be the right environment.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, we completely. We talked already about the hard skills that come from the old industry, and there it seems to me that the new soft skills to become successful tomorrow in tomorrow's business becoming important becoming more and more important every day. So my question is, what can companies do to nourish such skills like empathy, critical thinking, creativity, all those things that will help us to be successful tomorrow, but still are not really nourished by companies, and how that could be developed?
There is a fantastic book of Dr. Gerhard Wohland, probably one of the best books I've read the last years. And he takes it, he builds the differentiation between blue and red world, and the blue world is where you can tell how to do it, and the red world is where you have to ask who has talent, who has an idea. And in the blue world, on the other side, it would be, how do we do it? How is the process? What's the next step? So I think if we want to build out soft skills or push that field of competence, we have to stop asking the question, how do you do that? Or do you know how to do it? And ask more often the question, who could be the right talent in that situation? Who is the one? We don't exactly understand how, but who is the one building up teams? And to find the right people in the right situation for the right problem, that could also be a new management task, I think. Another topic I'm thinking about a lot is, if it's not clear, so if there is uncertainty about the way to get there, it will become more and more important to find managers and leaders, or simply people who build up a psychological safety environment. So they are giving courage to the colleagues, and pushing them with confidence, and they are taking the uncertainty on their shoulders and not pushing that to the teams. And I'm afraid you cannot really learn that. I think you can, of course, you can understand that, but I personally think you cannot really learn it. It's, and I know that the people out there saying there's no such a thing as talent, but I think there are talented people who can simply build an environment of courage and confidence. And if you find those people, push those people, bring them in the right position, then I think great stuff can happen.
Very interesting, of course. Okay, Fabian, I think we are heading to the end of our podcast today. Let me do some closing questions. I think you already started to mention some books, but what books are you reading at the moment, and can you might recommend some of those?
Yes, I have to say that Benno, so our CEO, he's a crazy man. He reads so many books, and he always brought it over to me. So I read also a lot of books, not as many as he, but still. So there's one book I really recommend, which is Die Denkwerkzeuge der Höchstleister. I'm not sure if it is translated into English. It's from Dr. Gerhard Wohland. We need to look it up. We need to look it up if it's translated to English.
We can look it up for our audience after.
But there are also cool interviews with him on YouTube to follow that. Then, of course, Reinventing Organizations from Frederic Laloux. Pretty cool. What else? Oh yeah, there is Sprint from Google Venture. And I use that really in industry with a couple of customers now, and we build it out MVPs using that book. Very, very, very cool. I can absolutely recommend it. So many books. And of course, Reese Startup, the startup stuff from that end.
I think that's very good. Yeah.
And there's one recommendation, Quality Land of Marc-Uwe Kling, something different. Okay. Very funny. And shocking. And funny.
That's good. We need shocking and riddling content. Okay, cool.
Very good. Cool.
How can our listeners connect with you if they want to reach out to you?
I think the easiest way is LinkedIn or Xing. LinkedIn or Xing. I think that's the easiest way, yes.
Okay, cool. Then I can just say thank you, Fabian, for today's podcast. I learned very much about innovation, transformation, and the whole human factor around it and how important it is. And thanks again for participating in our podcast on Virtual Frontiers today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. See you next time on Virtual Frontiers.
I'd like to thank our guest, Fabian Schünke, for joining us today. You can find out more about Fabian on the Vollmer Scheffczyk blog, and you can also follow him on LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe to The Virtual Frontier or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, or anywhere else podcasts are found. If you want to learn more about virtual teams as a service, visit flashhub.io. On behalf of the team here at FlashHub, I'd like to thank you for listening. So until next episode, keep exploring new frontiers.